Let's take a closer look at critical race theory and how it's impacting the state of Virginia, and specifically the 2021 governor's race in that state. Here's a clip from the local NBC news station in Washington, D.C., describing the chaos.
Tense moments before a school board meeting is cleared out for safety concerns.
Get her out of here!
You don't talk to a black woman that way.
Helping fuel it, race relations.
More specifically, critical race theory. More chaos over this issue. No one was hurt here, but as you heard, the room had to be cleared for safety concern. Now, these two people are facing off right now for the governor's race, and it may come down to critical race theory. Glenn Youngkin and Terry McAuliffe. Glenn Youngkin on the left, Terry McAuliffe on the right. Here's a headline from 538, why a Republican might win in Virginia's governor's race and how New Jersey's race could get tighter. Hint, it deals with three letters, critical race theory. Now, more Virginia voters also support laws banning critical race theory, according to this Emerson poll, and almost 90% of Virginians say they are at least somewhat familiar with this issue. Just 10% of voters in that state are not very familiar. And then here's something that's more important. 47% of Virginia voters say they support laws that ban the teaching of critical race theory in public schools in that state. Just 36% said they would not support such a ban. So a plurality of Virginia voters support a ban on critical race theory in public schools. Joining us now to talk more about this is investigative journalist and senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, Christopher Rufo. Christopher, great to have you back with us.
It's good to be with you.
All right, so I think that was maybe somewhat of a splashy headline from 538, but I do think it's pretty telling that critical race theory could be the determining factor in what happens with this Virginia governor's race.
Yeah, I think that's right. And if it's something that actually plays against type that has been promoted by people like NBC News, is that the revolt against critical race theory in the classroom is not coming from the southern part or the more conservative part of Virginia. It's actually coming from those D.C. suburbs in northern Virginia, in Fairfax County, in Loudoun County, where parents across the political spectrum and across all racial groups are revolting against it because they know that it seeds division, destruction, hatred. It doesn't do anything to help our kids learn, to help them be productive, ready for society. And this is the issue, and it has the left on the back. And I think that we're going to see this accelerating into this election and also accelerating into next year.
All right, so I do have to go a little bit deeper, though, into that 538 article because it repeats some of the same kind of talking points that I think one of the reasons why parents are so frustrated here is because of the reporting on it. And here is what the author writes. Youngkin has tried to hone in on critical race theory, a, quote, decades-old academic concept that asserts the existence of systemic racism, which has become a favorite boogeyman of conservatives. And again, it's not just conservatives, as you pointed out here, Christopher, that are so frustrated by this. It's a bipartisan, it cuts across political aisles. It's really about parents who feel like they're getting rolled by the powerful unions and the school districts.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, all of that reporting is inaccurate. It's probably disingenuous as well, because the fact is that CRT is not a decades-old academic framework that asserts the existence of systemic racism. It is that, but what parents are concerned about is that it's an academic framework in K-12 schools right now. We have the documents, we have the reporting that divides students as young as kindergarten into oppressor and oppressed based on their skin color. This is a way to scapegoat white students, but also to fill minority students with pessimism, despair, paranoia. We've seen that over and over. And in fact, the leadership in Virginia right now is comprised of predominantly Asian minority groups who think that critical race theory, as it seeks to undermine meritocracy, as it seeks to undermine competitive admissions, undermine academic achievement, is actually going to be very negative for their kids. They're absolutely right, and they should be absolutely not hesitant to fight back against it, despite these slanderous lies from the corporate media.
And the characterization as a quote-unquote boogeyman, too, I think, definitely undercuts what we've seen, in school board meetings across the country, in blue states, red states, elsewhere. It's not a boogeyman. That would imply there's some fake thing hiding under our bed that may or may not actually exist, but this is real, this is happening, and you have really detailed this. But why doesn't 538 and so many of these other establishment media sources want to admit this is a real thing?
Because they can't, because it's so deeply unpopular. Again, it's among Latinos and Asians by a 2-to-1 margin oppose it in the curriculum. Among white voters, very strong, and even among black voters in the fastest 20 growing cities in the United States, they actually oppose critical race theory in the curriculum. So the left and its kind of mouthpieces in the media can't even admit its existence, because to admit its existence would then have to grapple with this question that it's an ideology that is being driven by white liberal elites. They're using the image of suffering and of minority groups to advance their own boutique agenda. If they admit that it's real, if they admit that it's widespread, as I've done in my documented reporting, they would have to grapple with the fact that it is an extreme minority viewpoint among affluent, educated, white liberal elites that has nothing to offer middle and working class people, nothing to offer racial minorities. That's simply something that they can't grapple with psychologically, can't grapple with politically. So they choose this convenient fiction of scapegoating and denial.
I want to go back to that Emerson poll specifically that we brought up earlier, because, 47% of the voters in Virginia, well, there we see the 86%, which is also important. That's how many people are aware of it. And then you see the plurality here, 47%, who are in favor of these laws that ban critical race theory in schools. This is not, again, a boogeyman issue. Not only are voters in tune to what's going on here, but most of the folks that were polled are more so than that disagree. They think this stuff should be banned.
Yeah, and I think significantly, Virginia in the last number of elections has gone to the Democrats. It went to Joe Biden, obviously. And so this is a major reversal. And I think that this is a great issue, because it rallies not just conservatives, which are a minority in Virginia, but it actually extends the playing field. It's gathering a wider and broader base of support, because the reality is that most families, most middle class working families, they want a great education that's going to prepare their kids for employment, prepare their kids to be good, productive citizens. And they know that critical race theory, once it's introduced in the classroom, is poison. It turns kids against one another. It turns students against their country. And there's no evidence at all that it's actually good for kids. In fact, just the opposite.
And that's the key point about this. What's best for the kids, often, lost in a lot of these arguments when we talk about schools too. And I know you shared this video, the Daily Mail also reporting about an Iowa teacher, and this is just the latest example we have, an Iowa teacher talking about and bragging, really, quite frankly, how she is going to circumvent that state's ban on critical race theory. We tried to pull the video. It looks like it's been brought down from YouTube. Who knows what's going on here? But talk to us about this teacher in particular and what she's up to.
Yeah, this is a teacher who's almost gleefully bragging how she's going to violate the law or circumvent the law in Iowa. And I think, we are a nation of laws, and laws have to be enforced. You work for the public school system. You are accountable to the public. You have to follow the law just like anything else. So I fully expect that this teacher will be investigated. And if she's found to be in violation of the law, her employment should be terminated. We should have no hesitation about this. Public servants, especially those that are in control and have great influence over our children, who are vulnerable to political indoctrination and other abuse, they should be held to the highest standard. And if you are gleefully bragging about potentially breaking the law, you should be held accountable. And I fully expect that the authorities in Iowa will proceed along those lines.
And we have seen that in the past out in Sacramento specifically. We're thinking about that one case we reported on, I think the last time we talked to you, Christopher. And, the question is, this clearly violates the law. They get busted and then they get relieved of duty. The question is, why do they feel so comfortable going online and telling everybody they were going to do this? They obviously feel pretty comfortable. Maybe they shouldn't. Great to see you, Christopher. Thanks so much.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them. Tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.